remember this day very well. It was really gray and overcast. I got a phone call from one of my dearest girlfriends, a young woman who was very energetic and happy most of the time. And on this call, she could barely speak. I couldn't even understand what she was saying. So I decided to go over to her house and visit her. And when I walked in, she was sitting on the sofa in her nightgown, just staring out into space. And I hadn't really talked to her in a couple of weeks, so I didn't have any idea of what was going on. And she looked at me and she said, "Kay, I'm pregnant." I was really surprised because I did know she had a new boyfriend, but I hadn't even met him yet. They'd been together a couple of months. We really hadn't seen each other in a while. She said, "I am so scared." This was in about 1965, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time. There was no legal abortion. And I said, "Well, have you talked to your boyfriend?" And she said, "He took off. He left." She said, "I've gone to his apartment. It's empty. He's gone." And she said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." She said, she was a teacher in elementary school. She said, "If the administration finds this out, I'm going to be fired." She said, "I can't have a baby and be a single woman in this town." We lived in the Midwest, and it is still and was then very conservative. I mean, something like this just didn't happen to what they would call decent women. It just didn't happen. She was panicked, and I really was very worried for her. I sat her down and we talked about it, and she said, "I have to get an abortion." Neither one of us knew, we didn't have the clue on how that was going to take place. So I thought about it, and I knew one girl who was leading a more alternative lifestyle. She was a real sweet young woman, and I barely knew her, but she agreed to meet me, and we met in this, I think it was in the park. It's been so long ago, I barely remember. We met, and we had a conversation, and I asked her, "Well, do you know anyone who performs these abortions?" She said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "It's a country doctor. He is a licensed doctor, but what you have to do is this." She said, "I'll make an appointment if this is what your friend wants." She said, "But you have to go and show up in this little country office with all the other patients sitting in the waiting area, and you'll be called in just like you have the flu or you have the chicken pox or whatever." She said, "There's no anesthesia, and he will perform a D&C right in his office." I thought it was unbelievable, and I mean, in many ways, that a doctor would take this chance to do this, but it was a man who really did care about young women, and he knew how horrible this was to have an unwanted pregnancy and not have the money to support the baby, not have a family, not have any husband or whatever. And he did it. He took a chance. She didn't even tell me his name. So my girlfriend was out of it. She couldn't even talk. So I handled all this, and the girl, the other young woman, made the arrangement. And the day that I went to pick up my friend, we had an appointment, or she had an appointment, and we had it all planned. I would call her, "Are you ready?" "Yes, I'm going." And she'd kind of tell me, "Yes, I'll be ready." I got to my girlfriend's apartment. She was sitting in the bathtub naked. She was catatonic. She was staring out into space. She was so depressed, so scared, petrified of all of it. I didn't know what really, I didn't even think I could get her out of that apartment. But slowly, I helped her get dressed. I had to tell her everything to do, move your hand here, put your arm in the clothes. I got her dressed, and I drove her to this, out in the boonies, to this country office. And I didn't want to walk with her. Like, she was able to get in there. I didn't mind helping her, but she didn't really want me to. She said, I can do it. So she went to the office and she came out and she had this procedure done. And then I took her to some other friends that took care of her for the night. But I can tell you that experience was probably one of the scariest and the worst that either one of us have had, and especially my friend. I'm still very, very close to her to this day. It's been over 50 years. And she still talks about it. She still thanks me. She'll say, thank you for helping me do that, because she said, I had no choice. And I think when Roe versus Wade, I think it was 8 years later that Roe versus Wade was passed. And it changed the lives of many, many, many women. Stories like yours remind me just how valuable it is to have a place to go when you need reproductive guidance. These are the sounds of the Pink Out rally, where hundreds of my millennial peers and I attended in support of Planned Parenthood last year in September. For us, reproductive care is our primary health need. Do you know conservatives in Congress wanted to cut Planned Parenthood's funding? They threatened to cause a government shutdown if their demands weren't met. Planned Parenthood is a vital healthcare organization that provides care to millions of women and men every year, including safe and legal abortions. Planned Parenthood endorsed you, Hillary, in its first ever presidential primary endorsement. Quoting the organization, they said, Hillary Clinton holds the strongest record on reproductive rights of all presidential contenders, not in just this election, but in American history. I am proud to have earned that endorsement. You cannot have maternal health without having reproductive health. And reproductive health includes contraception, family planning, and access to legal, safe abortion. Today, abortion is one of the most commonly performed clinical procedures in the United States, and the death rate is extremely low. Estimates of the number of illegal abortions in the United States during the 1950s and 1960s range from 200,000 to 1.2 million per year. Prior to Roe versus Wade, as many as 5,000 American women died annually as a direct result of unsafe abortion. In a speech recently, I thanked Planned Parenthood for being there for women, no matter their race, sexual orientation, or immigration status, and for the transgender teens who come for an appointment and find the very first place where they can truly be themselves. Their accurate sex education and affordable contraception have contributed to an all-time low rate of teen births. As president, I will protect women's health and reproductive rights. Women's personal health decisions should be made by a woman, her family, and her faith with the counsel of her doctor. I will fight back against Republican attempts to restrict access to quality, affordable reproductive health care. I will defend access to affordable contraception, preventive care, and safe and legal abortion, not just in principle, but in practice. Moving right along, ladies, Hillary, tell us what it felt like to be Secretary of State. I know my peers would love to hear that from you. When President Obama first asked me to be his Secretary of State, 1 week after his election, I said no at first. He persisted. I decided if the president asks, you serve. You say yes if you can. I was reluctant to leave the Senate, but the new position represented a difficult and exciting adventure. It was incredibly all-encompassing, a 24/7 job. It was great. I wrote a memoir about my years in this office called Hard Choices. I'd like to talk to you about something that's bothered me so much during the last few years on your path to the presidency, Hillary. The Battle of Benghazi. There are some important facts not all my fellow millennials know about you and this disaster. Republicans charged that the White House knew almost immediately Benghazi was a terror attack, and they concealed it to protect President Obama's re-election campaign. The administration insisted Ambassador Rice was speaking from the best information available at the time. So much was happening so quickly that rumors were being spread for several months about what really happened that fateful night in Libya. It didn't take long for all Republicans to hold you responsible, Hillary, for all the horror and even the deaths of 4 Americans. This was the beginning of what we call #Benghazi. In December of that year, you had a personal incident that caused your critics to jump at the chance to peddle false information about your health. During a bout with the stomach virus, you passed out from dehydration, fell and hit your head, which resulted in a concussion. During follow-up treatment and a few weeks later, the doctors discovered a blood clot in a vein that drains blood from the brain. This is potentially very serious. If this goes untreated, these blockages can lead to strokes. I remember hearing that about you in the news, Hillary, and I was really upset. The reason I was upset about it is because about a year before that happened to you, I had a concussion myself. It was very innocent. And one night, I remember I felt really sick. And the next day, I thought I wasn't going to make it through the morning. But what I didn't know is that I was going to faint in my own kitchen, hit my head on one piece of furniture, and then drag myself on the floor and wake up. And how I found myself was staring at the ceiling on the cold tile floor. And I thought, what the heck? How did I get here? I fainted. I absolutely fainted. And there was blood oozing from my head. And all I had to do was get up. And I thought, I can't, my head is killing me. And I reached back and I was close enough to the phone, and I grabbed the phone and I was able to call my husband, and he came and got me and took me to the hospital, and I ended up having stitches in my head. The point of my story is you can faint and have a serious concussion with nobody home, and you're not making it up. And another thing that I wanted to call you actually, Hillary, but I didn't have your phone number. I've actually had 5 blood clots in my life. I didn't get a blood clot that day from a concussion, but I've had 5, and I've had 1 in my lungs. And when I saw what I call them gossip mongers had started about you and how you were making this story up, instead of caring about you and feeling for you that this really did happen, they were saying you didn't want to go before the committee on Benghazi. And I knew better than that. I'd been through it. It's horrible. And I really felt for you. You know, you live in a fishbowl, or actually like an aquarium, Hillary. I mean, every single thing you do is observed and calculated and talked about and spread around. And the GOP, the right-wing party of the GOP, have been horrible. And I really feel for you, and I'm sorry that this happened, because I lived through the very same thing, and you deserved love and attention. And I know that many people out there were sending you their prayers when this happened to you. It's just unfortunate that they made it in the public sound like it was on purpose. The rumors started right away after your short hospital stay that you faked the flu and a concussion to avoid testifying in Congress about Benghazi. Karl Rove said the clot was real and you suffered lingering brain damage that could render you unfit for office. He backtracked the next day, but it was too late. The gossip was already circulating on news channels. Glenn Beck on Fox News said, if she really had some weird thing in the hospital, then it should prohibit her from ever becoming president. Many people love and appreciate you. There were prayers and good wishes sent to you during that difficult time. But what is so disturbing is the level of distrust, negativity, and blame constantly being flung at you by the right wing of the Republican Party during Benghazi. They created a phony scandal with the hope it would keep you out of the White House. At the end of June of this year, House Republicans concluded their $7 million two-year investigation into the deadly attacks in Benghazi with accusations of mistakes by the Obama administration, but no smoking gun pointing to wrongdoing by you, Hillary, when you were Secretary of State. The amount of money, energy, and time expended in this pseudo-scandal is shameful. I agree. There have been 7 investigations led mostly by Republicans in Congress. They were nonpartisan, and they reached the conclusion that, first of all, I and nobody else did anything wrong, but there were changes we could make. This House Select Committee on Benghazi was set up, as they have admitted, for the purpose of making a partisan political issue out of the deaths of 4 Americans. What happened that awful night is personal to me. I stood next to President Obama as the Marines carried those flag-draped caskets off the plane at Andrews. I put my arms around mothers and fathers, the sisters and brothers, the sons and the daughters, and the wives left alone to raise their children. It was such a tragedy. I was heartbroken.